So welcome to everyone. We recognize that we have a hard stop at 3:30, and we didn't want to kill the panel, so as a consequence, we're starting with the folks that are here, but there are actually additional folks coming, and I will introduce them. Good afternoon to all of you, and I'm Ian Brimmer of Eurasia Group, the Global Political Risk Consultancy. I'm delighted to welcome you to the plenary session of the World Economic Forum, the new Great Game Revisited. It's a challenging topic in these uncertain times. Klaus Schwab wrote in yesterday's IHT that it's critical we respond to this crisis in a systemic and holistic way. And that's a tall order anywhere around the world, but particularly so in Eurasia, where Mackinder, the father of modern geopolitics, describing Eurasia, put it thus: who rules East Europe commands the heartland. Who rules the heartland commands the world island. Who rules the world island commands the world. That's a little dramatic, but the idea at its most fundamental is such. The Great Game is all about large countries in times of geopolitical volatility treating Eurasia as a chessboard, vying for resources, vying for power, and vying for influence. And flash forward to today, with the Soviet Union done, 15 independent states replacing it, the comparative erosion of American political capacity and willingness to intervene globally around the world, and also the rise of Russian assertiveness, especially in its backyard, all gives rise to the notion that the Great Game is back. So much for the panel background. Addressing the topic today, we have some key folks, heads of state and others from the region. First, directly to my left, President of Azerbaijan, Ilham Aliyev. Then, to his left, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, Prime Minister of Turkey. We're going to have President of Armenia, Serge Sarkisian. He is literally about 5 minutes away, I am told, as well as Manouchehr Mottaki, the Iranian Foreign Minister. So, given that we have a couple of us here, I want to start, and there are plenty that I can discuss that we can disagree with. Let me start with something that hopefully we can agree with. And we're here in Davos. We're in the center of Europe. And, the Armenians, the Azeris, the Turks are all members, and the Kazakhs, of lots of European organizations. The OSCE, in fact, Kazakhstan just became the first chair from the former Soviet Union, the history of that organization, the Council of Europe. Also popular culture. European, too. If you look at football brackets, all of these countries are playing for Europe. They're not playing for the Middle East or for Asia. And the Europeans do not question that. But they do question EU membership. So my first question is to President Aliyev. And what I want to ask him is there a European double standard? Do Azeri interests lie in European economic integration in the future, or are you going to be forced towards Russia and Middle East to a greater degree?
Well, since the very beginning of our independence, European direction of our policy was a priority and continues to be so, and there are multiple examples to that. It's not only the very fruitful bilateral relations between Azerbaijan and almost all the members of the European Union, but also the programs that we are participating in. For instance, Azerbaijan is a part of the program of new neighborhood policy of European Union. 2 years ago, more than 2 years ago, we signed a strategic energy partnership memorandum between EU and Azerbaijan. Today, the program of Eastern Partnership, including Azerbaijan, is being discussed, and hopefully soon we'll see the practical implementation of that program. So all that are very important steps and events which show how relations between Europe and Azerbaijan developed. Plus, if we add here energy cooperation and already existing modern sophisticated energy transportation infrastructure, of course we'll see that there is a lot to do together. Our relations with European countries is based on mutual interest, mutual respect, and hopefully these positive trends will continue. As far as the double standards question which you posed is concerned, yes, we see double standards everywhere, not only in certain geographical locations. And I can bring you numerous examples when Azerbaijan faced this double standards approach. But probably it will take a lot of time. In general, I would like to say that relations between Azerbaijan and European Union are positive. We are satisfied with the level of this cooperation and, of course, want to see more activity in the future.
Thank you, President. To Prime Minister Erdogan, related question everyone is always interested in, which is that is Turkey's desire to join the EU likely to fade through continual rebuffs? Are we going to see a Turkey which is really more oriented fundamentally towards Middle East and Eurasia?
Özellikle bir şeyin altını tabii çizmem lazım. Biz şu anda iktidarımız dönemini değerlendirecek olursak, bulunduğumuz sürece Avrupa Birliği müzakere sürecinde asla herhangi bir gevşeme, herhangi bir yavaşlama söz konusu olamaz.
Moving towards the European Union, we have never had any relaxation of that determination at any point. We are currently an accession country. We are continuing on with our negotiations for membership, and that is going well. But unfortunately, we see that we routinely have two chapters being opened for negotiations in every term presidency, and two in the next and the next and so on. So we've never had one or three chapters. It's always been two chapters per semester. And when we speak with our European friends, and I was in Brussels last week, they told me two is greater than one, and I told them that three is greater than two. So if we're successful, why not three chapters per semester? If we're not so successful for that period of time, then it could be one chapter. So it should vary. But we're still determined, and during the Czech presidency, we will continue with the same determination and seriousness to pursue our goal for EU membership. And our relations with the European Union, of course, have quite a number of dimensions. We're not just working through the negotiations process now. We have already a customs union with the European Union since 1996, and we're very different in the sense that other countries became members of the EU first before achieving customs union, whereas Turkey has become part of the customs union before becoming a member. So we are in that sense, we have a different relationship, in other words, with the European Union, and so I believe that our European friends ought to be looking at Turkey in a different light, and I am sure that we can move this process forward. In 2009, we wanted to proceed further in our relations with the EU, and therefore we appointed a minister whose portfolio is only on EU affairs. We have a Minister of State responsible for EU affairs now, so we will have more contacts with EU member states, and we will have more contacts with Brussels, and we will follow up on the negotiation process even more closely, and I believe that there will be a difference in the future.
Thank you. Allow me to welcome again, but with his presence, Foreign Minister Monoucher Mottaki from the Islamic Republic of Iran. While I'm on geopolitics, we all know we have a new administration in the United States. Since he's here, I have to ask him. President Obama has been saying that he's interested in engaging and developing a different policy towards the Iranian government, and the Iranians, I think, have tentatively said, let's see it. My question to you, in the context of the great game in Eurasia, Iran's geopolitical influence in the region has grown significantly over the course of the last few years, particularly in places like Iraq, as well as the importance of Iranian presence in Afghanistan. My question is, if President Obama were to come to the Iranian government and suggest that you work together on Afghanistan and Iraq, what sort of a response would he get?
In the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful, I'm very glad to join this panel with the presence of their excellencies here, and also some distinguished friends, which I see them and I know them. Yes, I have to confirm what you have mentioned nowadays and a little bit before. I mean, during the campaign of the United States election, presidential election. The main and very important word which is nowadays familiar to the public opinion is the word of change. And welcoming to this raising of such approach shows that, first of all, we have to believe the world indeed is changed. And it is very important that President Obama understands this changing. And everybody does hope to believe this change, to accept this change. And towards our region, there are so many areas which all the nations in the region, all the countries are waiting how this change is going to introduce itself. Is it a change strategically? Is it the change in tactics? Is it the change of literature? And all of these are the important title of the next panel, which is the new administration of USA. Will it meet the world's expectation? And according to my country, yes, I have to confirm that Iran, because of its history, because of its culture, because of its peaceful and coexistence approach in the region for not several decades, several centuries, but for several thousands of years, has created such influence which you have mentioned. And in the history of the region, always Iran was playing a constructive role. In other words, Iran was trying to use this influence, as you have mentioned, for coexistence, for cooperation, and based on a constructive manner and direction. You cannot see in the background of our history any aggression, and within last different decades, we have faced with several aggressions, even war against my country. But towards the new developments or change in the United States, there are some topics, as you have mentioned, which affects all the countries in the region, including the United States, because somehow is involved to this region. We do believe that if the new administration of the United States, as Mr. Obama said, is going to change its policies, not in saying but in practice, definitely they will find the region in a cooperative approach and reaction. And Iran is not excluded from this general understanding in our region. This is what we have shown in the past. We have been in Bonn Agreement. We have been in Tokyo. We have been in so many other gatherings for Afghanistan. Because stability and security in Afghanistan is not only in the national scale of Afghanistan, but as a need for the region. And also in Iraq, you will find Iran's constructive approach based on seeking for stability and security and calm circumstances in Iraq, which we consider in our interest as the other countries in the region. And that's why in the framework of the neighboring countries, we always had our constructive participations in different levels. And definitely that is the policy of the Islamic Republic of Iran towards the crisis which we are facing in our region.
Thank you very much. Let me turn toward the north and start with Prime Minister Erdogan. On Russia, Russian President Medvedev has stated that there are regions in the world where Russia has privileged interests, and he implied that Eurasia is one such region, compared it to the United States' privileged interests in Latin America. And I'm wondering two questions that are related. The first is, how do you view that assessment of Russia? And the second is, what does it mean to you for Turkey's orientation in foreign policy?
Of course, every country have interests in the regions that they're in, and so it's quite reasonable for Russia to make its own evaluations on that. One cannot question that. In the same way as Russia is doing that, Turkey too, in her own region, has interests, and Turkey will continue to take those interests into consideration to make sure that it has a better future. But of course, as you make those assessments, you have to also take into consideration mutual interest with the countries in the same region. If that happens, then of course it brings peace to any region. For example, in the most recent difficulties between Russia and Georgia, we as Turkey took some steps. We suggested the establishment of a Caucasus Stability and Cooperation project, and we visited Moscow first to talk about this, and the Russians were very favorable, and the next day we went to Georgia and made the same proposal to the Georgians, and they too approached the idea positively. And then I visited my dear friend President Aliyev, and he too looked favorably upon this idea, and our president, Turkish president, visited Armenia on occasion of a football match between Turkey and Armenia, and this subject was also discussed during the meetings there, and the response was positive. So our foreign ministers now are working on this idea, and our goal here is to look at the interests of the region as a whole, and to look for ways through which we can all mutually benefit from what needs to be done. And we are looking to have a stable region so that we can all stand to benefit from that stability. And in this way, we hope that problems between Armenia and Azerbaijan, between Turkey and Armenia, and between Russia and Georgia can be resolved. And if we can resolve those problems, then the whole region will be a region of peace. And that's exactly what we're looking for and working for. And I'm sure that Russia is also looking favorably upon that idea. You told me to answer briefly. That's why I'm answering briefly.
I appreciate that. We only have 25 minutes, so we're doing our best. President Aliyev, you can't talk about the great game without talking about energy. Of course, it's going to come up. We just had a gas dispute, pretty significant over the last few weeks between Russia and Ukraine. It's been resolved, at least for now. But the Europeans are definitely stepping up their support for the construction of alternative gas pipelines that would bypass Russia. And so what I'm wondering, and I think a lot of people here are probably interested in your views on this, is what role do you expect your country will have with regard to projects like Nabucco, considering both transit and supply?
When we started our energy cooperation with the major energy companies of the world in the mid-90s, at that time there were no crises in the neighborhood, there were no even concerns about the potential threat to energy supplies. And energy security issues were not discussed. These are all events of the recent years. So what we were doing in Azerbaijan was actually building modern infrastructure, investing jointly with foreign oil companies to produce oil and gas and to deliver it to international markets by multiple pipelines. And today we can already see the good results of that, because Azerbaijan today has 7 pipelines for oil and gas which transport and can transport in the future in more volumes our hydrocarbons to various directions. From this point of view, we feel ourselves completely safe. We are a self-sufficient country from point of view of energy resources, financial resources, and we are playing a role as an energy supplier and contributor to energy security of the neighboring countries. So what's happening today with respect to gas disputes, of course, increases attention to Azerbaijan, and not only as a transitor, which Azerbaijan was considered to be until recently, but also as a supply source. We have enormous gas reserves. Minimum assessment of proven reserves is at least 2 trillion cubic meters. Optimistic scenario is 5-6 trillion cubic meters. So it will be enough for decades, maybe for 100 years. And we have pipelines in place to supply the neighborhood with gas. Projects like Nabucco, which, by the way, 2 days ago we discussed on Nabucco summit in Budapest, of course, these projects like that have a good future, but they should be serious commitments. First, political commitment. There should be strong support from Europe of this project. Second, financial commitment, because the companies of Nabucco, to my mind, today, for them it will be difficult to finance such a huge multi-billion euro project. Of course, reliable sources of supply. Azerbaijan can play its role as an initial source of supply, and a resolution of all the transit questions. Combination of all these efforts and results in each of these segments which I mentioned will lead to success. And of course, as a country rich with oil and gas, we are interested in expanding the geography of our consumers. We discussed this morning in a very broad format issues of energy security, and I mentioned that energy security should be for all, including suppliers. And balance of interest between suppliers, transitors and consumers will lead to predictability, to sustainable supplies, will lead to peace in energy relations, will lead to cooperation but not alienation. Energy factor, to my mind, should not be used as an instrument of achievement of other goals. For us, it was always the case, and it will continue to be like that.
Thank you. And now I'd like to welcome our Armenian Foreign Minister, Eduard Nalbandian. And we have another chair at the end just in case. I think that's the way I'm going to view it. Let me just jump you right in if I can. We only have a little bit of time left in the panel, so ask if you could please make the responses relatively quick. Been talking about the energy position of Eurasia just now, and Armenia, of course, has not been fully included in major economic initiatives in the region, particularly South Caucasus and its energy corridor. In that regard, what is your vision for Armenia's geoeconomic strategy in Eurasia? And specifically, I'm wondering, in connection with Russia, given the fact that their economy, flat growth this year in all likelihood, markets down some 80% since May, is this making you change your strategy somewhat?
First of all, concerning the participation, the strategy of Armenia, we think that no country of the region could be excluded of the infrastructure, energy infrastructure, transport infrastructures, and it is well known that Armenia, this is the direct and maybe the cheapest way for many kinds of energy routes and transport routes. And there are some, for example, railway roads and transport roads which exist, and restoration and rehabilitation of these railroads could be only beneficial for all the region. And we don't think that, especially after the events of August around South Ossetia, it is absolutely clear that the infrastructure of energy and transport is not developed in our region, and we need some new alternatives, and all the region must participate in this project. That's why we are looking forward for the construction of the new alternative road with Georgia. That's why we are looking forward for the construction of railway road with Iran. And that's why we are ready to discuss and to participate to any project, regional project of transport and energy infrastructure in our region.
Thank you very much. Let me turn for a second to talk about the issue we have with the Armenian-Turkish question. I know that over the last day we've had 3 meetings between yourself and the Turkish foreign minister. And one has to hope with that level of coordination that maybe there's something that's going to come out of this. Maybe there's an opportunity. And I know that historically the Turkish government has used Davos as a forum to advance relations with Greece very successfully. So I'm wondering if there's anything that you could, I know you're going to be meeting with the president shortly, if there's anything you could share with us, Prime Minister Erdogan, both a message to the Armenian president or about where relations might be headed.
Yes, no, why not to use Davos also to advance relations with Turkey? You know that the initiative of the Armenian president to invite Turkish president to come to Armenia in September, and it was very wise from the Turkish side to accept this invitation and for President Gül to come to Armenia. And this gave us opportunity to start normalization process, and till now we had many meetings with foreign minister and also in a technical level, and I think we are on a good way, and we are mostly optimistic, and we hope that we will come to normalization of our relations, which are in the interest of Turkey, in the interest of Armenia, and in the interest of all of our region. Our position is that we are looking forward to for the normalization of our relations, establishment of diplomatic relations, opening of borders, and then we could discuss all questions of our bilateral concern. I think that we are in a good way, and we hope that maybe Davos will be another opportunity to boost the normalization process between our 2 countries.
Prime Minister Erdogan.
Tabii ben akşam Sayın Albayrak'la
This evening I will be seeing the President, and it's not proper for me to say something about that meeting now before having met the President. But after the meeting with the President, there may be statements about our discussions. Our goal, of course, is, as I have stated before, to contribute to regional peace. That is the overarching aim. And all parties must take steps and be courageous.
bu atılan adımlar kurban
if
edilirse
this work is victim to the work of diasporas, then it's very sad. It would be very regretful, because the diasporas are working to prevent these steps from being taken. So we have to really focus on what we, the two countries, need to do, and we should not let others be involved, and we should really work as from one country to the other. And that's why we have made some gestures before, and we'd like to see a reciprocation, and so we can resolve the issues between the two countries. Same thing for Azerbaijan and Armenia. There too we have issues for the last 17 years. The Minsk Group, Russia, the US, France, they have all been trying to solve the problems between Armenia and Azerbaijan for the last 17 years. We have contacts with Azerbaijan, brotherly relations, we have regional relations, and now we have growing relations with Armenia. So it was in that light that we had proposed the idea of a Caucasus Stability and Cooperation Platform. The work that our foreign ministers have been doing, that's very important, and I view those steps as being very positive, and I hope that we will keep moving in the positive direction and not take heed of others which try to pull us down. Thank you.
We could see an opening of diplomatic relations in the near horizon between the two states.
We hope.
şimdi temelleri atılıyor.
Well, we are trying to establish the basis, the foundation for that.
That's the spirit of Davos. It's very promising. They brought you into this, Prime Minister Erdogan. President Aliyev, would you like to make any comments just from the Azeri perspective on the relations?
On which relations?
Well, specifically around Karabakh and the Azeri-Armenian relations, since Prime Minister Erdogan raised it.
Well, we do not have any relations with Armenia. And the reason is the continued occupation of our territory by Armenian armed forces.
We have negotiations. We do have negotiations.
Yes, we are in the process of negotiations, but unfortunately, as Prime Minister Erdogan said, for the last 17 years, these negotiations did not lead to a resolution of the conflict, did not lead to a peace agreement, and did not lead to liberation of Azerbaijani territory, internationally recognized territory of Azerbaijan. Under these circumstances, of course, we cannot talk about any kind of cooperation, whether it's energy or transportation. Though if you look at the map, it may seem that the shortest route for our hydrocarbons to the west is through Armenia, but it's only when you look at the map. If you stand on that soil, you will see that it is the longest way. And until our lands are under occupation, this cooperation is not possible. I think our position is understandable. And we do not demand something extraordinary. We just demand that Armenia comply with internationally recognized law norms, comply with the United Nations Security Council resolutions, and pull out the troops from Azerbaijani land. And then the peace will come, then all the communications will open, and all the countries of the region will take advantage of the opportunities of each other.
You know, related question for Foreign Minister Mataki. I remember when I was in Azerbaijan in the mid-90s, and the first folks to set up the refugee camps on the ground were the Iranians. They've had a long history in this part of the world, and often much less controversial one than say, the one I just raised in Iraq. I'm wondering if Foreign Minister Mataki could tell us just a little bit about what we should expect, sort of if there's a big initiative or two on the horizon in terms of Iranian relations with Central Asia and the Caucasus, with the historic Silk Road.
May I say a sentence about the previous issue?
Absolutely.
Sometimes common interest and some other time common concern is the cause of integration and cooperation among the countries in the same region. Very recently, our region has faced with the crisis of Caucasus. And now we have two main and important members of the Caucasus region, Azerbaijan and Armenia. And we have been involved together. We have been in touch. And we had good and constructive consultations together. We do believe that in this region, that crisis which happened in Georgia should give us the lesson for more close contact, cooperation, and trying our best to achieve solution based on justice and rules, and in favor of the interest of the nations in the region. We do believe that we need a framework of dialogue, regional dialogue. It does not mean that we cannot have the assistance and consultation out of the region. Based on this framework, we understand from the region that we have three important titles: transportation, energy, and security. And these are the topics which, through a regional constructive dialogue, we have to reach. A part of the title, as you have mentioned, is the Central Asia, which you have referred to. And Central Asia is introduced based on its people, through their culture, through their history, through their commonalities. And after 1990s, appearing of its other capacities, particularly in the field of energy, good capacity are there: Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, and we are witnessing Tajikistan as storage of the region's water, which is very important. And at the same time, Central Asia is a part of Silk Road, and nowadays it shows and translates the importance of transportation from this region. Several important projects are there. When we had the summit of Caspian Sea in Tehran, a trilateral agreement was signed between the presidents of Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, and Iran for railway aside Caspian Sea, the eastern part. And also we are member of ECO with Central Asia, Turkey, Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Azerbaijan. Iran with Central Asia is in Shanghai. You can see a lot of subjects, issues, topics, and possibilities, potentials for integration, cooperation in the region. Unfortunately, from 1990s, we have faced with some destructive interfere from out of the region for the regional integration and cooperation. We have to remove those obstacles. Now we have agreed with Kazakhstan for transferring of up to 1 million barrel of oil through the Iranian ports in Caspian Sea and exporting for them from Persian Gulf. We will have less than about 1 month from now the summit of the ECO countries in the region. We will have the inauguration of the railway from Chabahar and Bam, which is another connection between the Persian Gulf region to Central Asia. I would like to inform, and I know that all the friends are fully aware about the potentials in our region. At the same time, there is a common and consensus position for stability in the region through cooperation among the regional countries, and we have no any problem among the countries in that region. Central Asia is a potential friendly to the other part of the world through energy for all the consumers, aside with the other countries in the region, either Russia, Azerbaijan, and the Persian Gulf states with their potentials.
Thank you very much. I'm going to try to sneak in two quick questions before we wrap. First one to President Aliyev. One guy, of course, that isn't here from your region is President Saakashvili. He's had a bad year. He's probably going to have a bad year in 2009. If you had any advice to offer him for 2009 that might help to position him a little bit better, what would it be?
Well, we do not have such a problem because we see each other quite often, and we are neighbors, and Georgia and Azerbaijan are strategic partners and implemented very important projects jointly which contribute to our independence and energy security and serves the cause of energy security of Europe. Therefore, we are in close contact and, of course, exchange views on bilateral issues quite often. And I just want to wish success our Georgian friends and brothers in order to stabilize the situation, in order to, as soon as possible, to overcome the consequences of the crisis. And Azerbaijan, as a reliable friend and neighbor on its behalf, will do its best in order to support Georgia. I can tell you that we are investing a lot in Georgia's economy. Our companies invested in the last couple of years something like $3 billion into Georgian economy. Our oil company, SOCAR, its Georgian branch, is the biggest investor in Georgia and the biggest taxpayer. So this is a clear indication of our relations, and the stronger relations between our two countries are the better for the region. And we need to continue this positive trend, and of course stability in the country and stability around your borders for every country is very important, including Azerbaijan.
Thank you. Last question to Prime Minister Erdogan. You've had a busy administration on the foreign policy front. You've improved relations with Syria, to your credit. You've improved relations with Iran. You have closer relations with Iraq and continues over time. You're also working to bring and bridge Pakistan and Afghanistan, trilateral discussions. But when we talk about the Silk Road, I go back to President Demirel, who talked about the dream of a Turkic nation that would stretch from the Adriatic to China. Is that too much? Is that something that you can actually pull off with everything else that Turkey's engaged in internationally, or do you really need to be involved in the Caspian with the West sort of taking a lead role?
Şimdi bu konularla ilgili uygulamayı zaten biz Sayın Aliyev,
President Aliyev, President Saakashvili, and our country, Turkey, we have been cooperating a lot in trying to develop relations. For example, we have some work for transportation roads between Kars and Tbilisi. That's part of the Silk Road. So we are at a stage where we're not only talking about the ideas, but we're also implementing them. As far as other issues and areas in the region, our primary goal is to serve peace in the region, and that's we feel the most important thing to do. And as long as countries, sides involved in issues ask for our help, we have always been there to facilitate talks. For example, between Afghanistan and Pakistan, during President Cesar's time, there was a first round of trilateral talks, the second of which took place recently with President Gül. So we will continue along that track, and there are problems between Pakistan and Afghanistan which need to be resolved. Terrorism is a very important issue which needs to be taken up here. Also, on the Israeli-Syrian track, we have conducted 4 rounds of discussions carried out by our special envoys. The fifth round was actually carried out as prime ministers with our advisors present, but that discussion was seen by some to be intertwined with what's going on in Gaza, whereas our discussions were specifically on the Israeli-Syrian track when we met most recently, and we had discussions with the Syrian president, with the foreign minister of Syria, when we were meeting with the Israeli prime minister. And we have always said that we are ready to help in any way that we can in relations between Israel and Hamas. So when we had most recent discussions with the Israeli Prime Minister last month, there was no reply back, and without a reply coming back, there was bombing of Gaza, which began, and we thought to be quite lacking in respect as far as the status of our relations are concerned. And however, we have been working on our relations with Israel. In Iraq too, we worked to bring the Sunnis on board at the time of elections. So we performed quite a number of important tasks as Turkey. We will continue to do that. We're determined to help facilitate peace wherever we can. The role that we as politicians have in trying to achieve peace is to stay around the negotiating table, because we believe that that's where solutions ought to come. And let me say that we view issues, for example, most recently in Gaza. Our concern there was on a humanitarian basis. It should never be interpreted as being directed against Israel or Jews. I have always condemned anti-Semitism, and nothing has changed today. I continue to condemn it. What I have stated before has been criticizing some of the policies of the government of Israel, and I continue to have those ideas, those thoughts, and I have also said that the international community has been insensitive to what's transpiring in Gaza on a humanitarian basis, because remember, going back to Georgia, the international community was immediately mobilized to help in Georgia, and many countries tried to help, but not so in the case of Gaza. People waited for a couple of weeks and remained observant when more than 1,000 people died, more than 5,000 people were wounded. So that process in Gaza did not come into play as soon as it should have. Now there's a ceasefire. Let's hope that the ceasefire holds true and we can have peace in the Middle East.
Thank you very much. I wish you a great dinner tonight, Prime Minister Erdogan and President Sarkisian. Please join me in thanking all of the panelists.